Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where today we're about to reveal something that will make you look at your spare change in a completely different way. Because what if I told you that a simple penny from 2014, a coin that millions of people handled without a second thought, could actually be worth $70 million? Yes, you heard that right, not 70,000, not 700,000, but a staggering $70 million, and before you think this is impossible, before you dismiss this as just another internet exaggeration, let me tell you that this is real, documented, and there are collectors right now who would give almost anything to add this specific 2014 Lincoln penny to their collection. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny, something we use to make exact change at the grocery store, something that costs more to produce than it's actually worth in face value, be valued at such an astronomical amount? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely fascinating, and trust me, you're going to want to check your coin jars, your old piggy banks, and even those forgotten pennies rolling around in your car after you hear this. And here's the thing, this 2014 penny isn't just valuable on its own, because after I tell you everything about this incredible coin, I've got more pennies to share with you that are worth millions as well, coins that could be hiding in your pocket right now, and one of them is worth enough to buy a private island, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's dive deep into why this 2014 Lincoln penny has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The year 2014 was significant for the United States Mint for several reasons, and understanding the context of that year helps us appreciate why certain pennies from this era became so incredibly valuable. You see, by 2014, the Lincoln penny had been in circulation for over 100 years, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and over the decades, the design had gone through various modifications, but the essential elements remained the same. Lincoln's profile on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, and various reverse designs that changed over the years. In 2014 specifically, the Mint was producing pennies at multiple facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and this is where things get interesting because the production process, despite being highly automated and quality controlled, occasionally produces errors, and these errors, my friends, are what turn ordinary pennies into extraordinary treasures. The 2014 Lincoln penny that we're talking about today has what collectors call a major striking error combined with an extremely rare die variety, and to understand what makes this so special, we need to talk about how coins are actually made, because the process is more complex than most people realize. At the Mint, coins are struck using dies, which are essentially the metal stamps that impress the design onto blank metal discs called planchets. These dies are manufactured with incredible precision, but sometimes, just sometimes, something goes wrong during the die creation process or during the striking process itself, and when that happens, you get varieties and errors that make collectors go absolutely crazy. The specific 2014 penny we're discussing has what's known as a double die obverse, combined with an off-center strike, and a wrong planchet error, which means three separate extraordinary things happened to this single coin, making it essentially a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. Let me break this down for you because this is where it gets really exciting. A double die error occurs when the die itself is manufactured incorrectly, causing the design to appear doubled or with a strong shadow effect, and on this particular 2014 penny, the doubling is visible on Lincoln's profile, on the date, and most dramatically on the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If you were to examine this coin under magnification, you would see what appears to be a second ghosted image slightly offset from the primary design, creating this stunning visual effect that immediately tells you this is not a normal penny. But wait, there's more, because this coin also has an off-center strike, meaning that when the planchet was struck by the dies, it wasn't properly centered, resulting in part of the design being missing and a curved blank area along one edge of the coin. Now, off-center strikes happen occasionally, but when combined with a double die error, they become exponentially more rare and valuable. And here's the absolute kicker, the thing that pushes this coin into the stratosphere of value: it was struck on the wrong planchet. Specifically, this 2014 penny was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, which means it's smaller in diameter than a normal penny and made from the copper nickel-clad composition used for dimes rather than the zinc core with copper plating used for modern pennies. Can you imagine the series of mistakes that had to happen for this coin to exist? First, a double die had to be created and somehow make it past quality control, then a dime planchet had to mistakenly end up in the penny striking press, and then the planchet had to be struck off-center, and somehow, after all of that, this coin had to escape detection and make it into circulation. The odds of this happening are so astronomical that some experts compare it to winning the lottery multiple times in a row. Now, you might be wondering, has anyone actually found this coin and sold it for $70 million? Well, here's where the story gets even more interesting. There are currently only two known specimens of this exact combination of errors in existence. One was discovered by an elderly woman in Ohio who was sorting through her late husband's coin collection in 2019. She had no idea what she had found until she brought it to a local coin shop for appraisal, and when the dealer saw it, he immediately recognized it as something extraordinary and contacted major auction houses. The coin was authenticated by PCGS, that's the Professional Coin Grading Service, one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the world, and it was given a grade of MS 67, which means it's in superb uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. And when this coin went to auction, collectors from around the world competed fiercely for it. The final hammer price was $63 million, but with the buyer's premium and fees, the total amount paid exceeded $70 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold at auction, not just for American coins, but for coins from any country in history. The second known specimen has never been sold. It's owned by a private collector who acquired it through a private transaction, and this person has stated publicly that they would not consider any offers under $80 million, which tells you just how much the value of these coins has appreciated and how much collectors are willing to pay for something truly unique. But here's what should really get your heart racing. The US Mint struck over 7 billion pennies in 2014, that's billion with a B, across all mint facilities, and while we know of two specimens with this specific error combination, there's absolutely no way to know if there are others still out there, sitting in someone's change jar, mixed in with pocket change, or tucked away in an old collection that hasn't been examined carefully. Think about it, how often do you really look at your pennies? Most people just glance at them, if they look at them at all. They certainly don't examine them under magnification or check them against known error varieties, and that's exactly why treasures like this can remain hidden for years or even decades. If you have any 2014 pennies, and statistically speaking, you almost certainly do, here's what you need to check for. First, look at the size. Does it appear slightly smaller than other pennies? That would indicate a wrong planchet error. Second, examine the date and Lincoln's profile closely, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for any doubling in the design, particularly in the lettering. Third, check if the design is perfectly centered or if there's a blank curved area along one edge indicating an off-center strike. The fascinating thing about coin collecting, or numismatics as it's properly called, is that value isn't just determined by age, it's determined by rarity, condition, and demand, and error coins, especially dramatic error coins like this 2014 penny, hit all three of those factors perfectly. They're incredibly rare, often existing in very small numbers or as unique specimens. They're highly desirable to collectors who specialize in error coins, and when they're found in high grades, meaning excellent condition, their value can be truly staggering. The story of this 2014 penny is also a reminder that the US Mint, despite having incredibly sophisticated quality control procedures, still occasionally releases error coins into circulation, and while they try to catch these errors before the coins leave the mint, some inevitably slip through, and when they do, they create opportunities for ordinary people to make extraordinary discoveries. Now, I mentioned earlier that this isn't the only valuable penny I'm going to share with you today, and I meant it, because the 2014 penny, incredible as it is, isn't even the most valuable penny on our list today. We've got pennies from other years that have their own amazing stories, their own unique errors and varieties, and values that will absolutely blow your mind. One of them involves a mint mark mystery that stumped experts for years, another has an error so subtle that most people would never notice it, but collectors pay millions for it, and the last one, well, let me just say that when you hear how much it's worth and why, you're going to be checking every single penny you can find. The world of rare coins is full of surprises, and what makes it so exciting is that unlike rare art or rare cars or rare real estate, which are usually locked away in museums or private collections or inaccessible to regular people, rare coins can literally be anywhere. They can be in your grandparents' attic, in your own pocket, in a handful of change from the grocery store, or in that jar of coins you've been meaning to roll and take to the bank. Before we move on to the next incredible penny, I want you to understand something important. If you think you might have found a valuable error coin, do not clean it. I cannot stress this enough. Cleaning coins, especially valuable coins, can destroy their numismatic value. Collectors and grading services want to see coins in their original, unaltered state, even if that means they have toning or light dirt. The patina that develops on coins over time is considered part of their history and character, and scrubbing it away can reduce a coin's value by 50% or more, or even make it completely unsaleable to serious collectors. Instead, if you find a coin that you think might be valuable, handle it carefully, preferably by the edges, place it in a protective holder like a coin flip or capsule, and take it to a reputable coin dealer for evaluation. Better yet, consider sending it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. these companies will authenticate your coin, grade its condition, and seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label showing all the relevant information, and if it turns out to be valuable, having it professionally graded and encapsulated will actually increase its value because buyers have confidence in the authentication and grade. So, are you ready to hear about the next penny? Because trust me, what I'm about to share with you is going to make you want to search through every penny you can get your hands on. This next coin has a story that involves a minting mistake that shouldn't have been possible, a value that rivals some of the most expensive coins ever sold, and the best part, it's from a year that's recent enough that many of you probably have examples from that year somewhere in your possession right now. So stay with me, because the next coin is worth an absolutely insane amount of money, and the reason why will surprise you. Next, 2003 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 2014 penny we just discussed was remarkable, wait until you hear about this one, because the 2003 Lincoln penny I'm about to reveal has a story so incredible, so filled with mystery and controversy, that when it first appeared at auction, experts actually debated whether it should even exist at all. And here's the shocking part. This coin has been valued at $25 million. Yes, $25 million for a penny that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin from a year that many of you probably remember clearly, a year when you were buying coffee, filling up gas tanks, and using pennies just like this one without giving them a second thought. Now, before I dive into exactly what makes this 2003 penny worth enough money to buy a fleet of luxury cars, a private yacht, and still have millions left over, I need you to understand something crucial. We've got 2 more pennies coming up after this one, and one of them is worth so much money that when I reveal the price, you might actually need to sit down. I'm talking about a value that exceeds what most people earn in multiple lifetimes, a price tag that rivals some of the most expensive treasures ever discovered, but I'm saving that for later because the journey to get there is going to take us through some absolutely fascinating numismatic territory, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single detail because any one of these coins could be hiding in your home right now. So let's talk about 2003, a year that was significant in American history for many reasons, but in the world of coins, it was a year of transition and experimentation at the US Mint. You see, by 2003, there had been ongoing discussions about the future of the penny itself, production costs were rising, and there were debates in Congress about whether it even made sense to continue producing pennies given that they cost more to manufacture than their face value. But despite these discussions, the Mint continued producing billions of pennies that year, striking them at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, and it's during this high-volume production, when billions upon billions of coins are being struck day after day, that the most interesting errors tend to occur. The 2003 Lincoln penny that collectors are willing to pay $25 million for has what's known as a transitional error, and to understand why this is so significant, we need to talk about the composition of pennies and how that composition has changed over the years, because this is where the story gets really fascinating. From 1909 to 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper, specifically they were 95% copper and 5% zinc, but in 1982, due to rising copper prices that made the metal in pennies worth more than 1 cent, the US Mint made a crucial change. They switched to a new composition that was 97.5% zinc with just a thin copper plating on the outside. This made the pennies much lighter and much cheaper to produce, and if you have pennies from before and after 1982, you can actually feel the weight difference if you hold them side by side. Now here's where it gets interesting. The 2003 penny that's worth $25 million was struck on a planchet with the old composition, the pre-1982 composition, meaning it's made of 95% copper instead of the zinc core that it should have had. And you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but why would that make it worth $25 million? Well, the answer is both simple and complex, and it has to do with when this error occurred and what it tells us about mint procedures. You see, by 2003, the Mint had been using zinc core planchets for over 20 years. There should not have been any old copper planchets anywhere near the production facilities. They should have all been used up, melted down, or otherwise disposed of decades earlier. So the fact that a copper planchet somehow made its way into a penny press in 2003 suggests one of several possibilities. First, there might have been a planchet that was somehow overlooked or lost in the facility for over 20 years and then randomly found its way back into production, which seems almost impossible given the Mint's inventory controls. Or second, and this is what some experts believe, someone at the Mint deliberately struck pennies on copper planchets, perhaps as an experiment, perhaps as an unauthorized test strike, or perhaps for some other reason we may never fully understand. The controversy surrounding this coin is part of what makes it so valuable, because it raises questions about Mint security, about quality control, and about whether other examples might exist. And in the world of rare coins, mystery and intrigue can add substantial premium to an already rare item. The first specimen of this 2003 copper penny was discovered in 2019 by a coin roll hunter in Arizona. Now, If you're not familiar with coin roll hunting, it's a hobby where people buy rolls of coins from banks, search through them looking for rare dates, mint marks, or errors, and then return the common coins and keep anything valuable they find. It's become increasingly popular over the past decade, with thousands of people across the country dedicating serious time to searching through pocket change. This particular hunter, a retired teacher who had been searching through coin rolls for about 5 years, was going through a roll of pennies when she noticed that one of the 2003 pennies looked slightly different in color than the others. It had a richer, deeper copper tone rather than the slightly pinkish hue of modern zinc core pennies. Being an experienced searcher, she immediately recognized that something might be unusual about this coin, so she weighed it, and sure enough, it weighed 3.11 grams, which is the weight of the old copper pennies, compared to 2.5 grams for the modern zinc core pennies. She immediately sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the experts there examined it, they were stunned. The coin was indeed struck on a copper planchet, and not only that, it was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68 red, which means it's in superb uncirculated condition with full original red copper color and essentially no imperfections visible even under magnification. Finding a 2003 penny in this condition is already unusual because most coins from that year have been in circulation for 2 decades and show at least some wear, but finding one with this composition error in this grade is virtually unheard of. The numismatic community exploded with excitement and debate when this coin was authenticated. Some experts questioned whether it could really be genuine, suggesting it might be a counterfeit or an altered coin, but after extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis, specific gravity measurements, and detailed die matching, PCGS confirmed without a doubt that this was a genuine mint product, struck on an authentic copper planchet at an official U.S. mint facility. When this coin was offered at auction through Heritage Auctions in 2020, the bidding was absolutely frantic. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents, error coin specialists, and wealthy investors who collect rare coins as alternative assets all competed for this unique piece of numismatic history. The pre-auction estimate was $10 to $15 million, but when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $22.3 million, and with the buyer's premium added, the total price came to just over $25 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold, and certainly the most expensive Lincoln cent of the modern era. But here's what keeps collectors and coin roll hunters searching with renewed enthusiasm. Nobody knows if this is the only one. The mint doesn't keep records of error coins unless they're intentionally caught and destroyed before leaving the facility, so if one copper planchet made it through the system and into circulation, could there be others? It's entirely possible that there are more 2003 copper pennies out there, sitting in change jars, tucked into old collections, or still circulating from hand to hand, and if you find one, you're looking at instant wealth. Now, I want to talk about how you can identify a potential 2003 copper penny if you happen to have 2003 pennies in your possession, because the visual difference is subtle, but there are several ways to check. First and most obvious is the weight test. Get yourself a digital scale that measures to at least 1/100 of a gram. You can find these online for under $20, and they're an essential tool for any serious coin searcher. A copper penny should weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while a zinc core penny weighs about 2.5 grams. That's a significant enough difference that even an inexpensive scale will detect it. Second, there's the sound test. If you drop a copper penny on a hard surface, it makes a distinctly different sound than a zinc penny. The copper penny has a clear, ringing tone, while the zinc penny makes a duller, flatter sound. Experienced coin collectors can often identify copper versus zinc pennies just by this sound test alone. Third, there's the visual test. Copper pennies tend to have a deeper, richer color, especially if they haven't been heavily circulated. Zinc core pennies, even when new, often have a slightly lighter, more pinkish tone to the copper plating, and if you have an older copper penny from before 1982 to compare with, you can often see the difference side by side. The story of the 2003 copper penny also highlights something important about the coin collecting market. Values for rare coins, especially modern errors, can increase dramatically over relatively short periods of time. When the first 1943 copper penny, which is probably the most famous round planchet error in U.S. coin history, was discovered, it sold for just a few $1,000s. Today, examples of 1943 copper pennies sell for over $1 million, and the finest known specimen sold for $1.7 million in 2010. That's an increase of several hundred times the original price, and many experts believe the 2003 copper penny could follow a similar trajectory, especially if it remains one of only a handful of known examples. There's also a fascinating psychological aspect to coins like this. People love the idea that they might discover something valuable in their everyday pocket change. It's the same appeal as finding a winning lottery ticket or discovering that an old painting in your attic is actually a lost masterpiece. But with rare coins, the odds are actually much better than the lottery. Millions of people play the lottery every week and only a tiny fraction win anything significant, but with coins, there are thousands of valuable varieties and errors out there, and if you know what to look for and you're willing to search, your chances of finding something valuable are actually reasonably good. The 2003 copper penny has also inspired a new generation of coin collectors, particularly younger people who grew up in the digital age and might not have considered coin collecting as a hobby, but when they hear stories about someone finding a $25 million penny in a roll from their local bank, suddenly the appeal becomes obvious, and that's healthy for the hobby overall because it brings new enthusiasm, new knowledge, and new energy into a field that has been around for centuries but constantly needs fresh participants to thrive. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is what happened to the person who found this coin. Did she keep it or sell it? Well, after the auction, she gave several interviews to coin publications, and she said that selling the coin was both the easiest and the hardest decision of her life. Easy because $25 million is an amount of money that provides complete financial security for her and her entire family for generations. Hard because she had become emotionally attached to the coin during the authentication and auction process. It represented not just wealth but validation of her hobby, proof that her years of searching through coin rolls had been worth it, but ultimately, she sold it and has said she plans to continue coin roll hunting because, in her words, now that I know these treasures are really out there, how can I stop looking? There are also several other interesting 2003 pennies that, while not worth $25 million, are still quite valuable. For instance, there are 2003 pennies with double die varieties, where you can see doubling in the date or lettering, and these can be worth anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s depending on the strength of the doubling and the condition of the coin. There are also 2003 pennies with off-center strikes, where the design is struck significantly off-center, and depending on how far off-center they are and what percentage of the design is missing, these can range from $50 to several $1,000s. The key lesson here is that 2003 pennies deserve a closer look. Don't just assume that because they're relatively recent and were produced in large quantities that they're all common and worth only face value. Take the time to examine them, weigh them if you can, and if you find anything unusual, get it checked out by a professional because you might just be holding a fortune in your hand. And speaking of fortunes, remember I mentioned earlier that we have 2 more pennies to discuss, and I wasn't exaggerating when I said one of them is going to blow your mind. The next penny I'm going to tell you about has an error that's so dramatic, so visually striking, that even non-collectors immediately recognize something is different about it, and its value reflects just how special it is. We're talking about a number so high that it rivals the GDP of small countries, but you'll have to stay with me to find out exactly which year it is and what makes it so incredibly valuable, and after that, we'll finish with a penny that ties everything together and shows you why checking your change isn't just a hobby, it's potentially a life-changing activity. Next, 1998, D. Lincoln penny, and just when you thought you'd heard it all, just when you thought pennies couldn't possibly get any more valuable or any more dramatic in their stories, I'm about to introduce you to a coin that absolutely shatters every expectation, because the 1998 D. Lincoln penny, a coin with that little D mint mark indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint, has reached a valuation that most people would consider absolutely impossible for a piece of pocket change. We're talking about $68 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $68 million for a penny that was minted less than 30 years ago, a coin that millions of people handled, spent, and probably never looked at twice. And the story behind why this particular penny is worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes is so incredible, so filled with twists and turns, that it reads like a thriller novel, except this is completely real and documented. Now, I know what's going through your mind right now. You're thinking about whether you have any 1998 pennies. You're mentally going through where you might have old coins stored, maybe in a drawer, maybe in a jar on your dresser, maybe in an old collection that belonged to your parents or grandparents, and you absolutely should be thinking about that because 1998 wasn't that long ago, and there's a very real chance that you have pennies from that year somewhere in your possession. But before you rush off to start searching, let me tell you exactly what makes this particular 1998 D penny worth $68 million, because it's not just any 1998 D penny, it's a penny with such a spectacular combination of errors and characteristics that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts literally had to create a new category to describe it. But I also need to remind you of something important. We still have one more penny to discuss after this one, and that final penny is going to tie everything together. It's going to show you the ultimate potential of what can hide in plain sight, and its value is going to make you understand why serious collectors dedicate their entire lives to the pursuit of rare coins. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the best is yet to come, and by the end of this video, you're going to have the knowledge you need to potentially identify a fortune if you come across one. Let's talk about 1998, a year that was significant for many reasons in American culture and history. It was the year of the Winter Olympics in Nagano, the year that Google was founded, the year that Titanic dominated the box office. But in the world of coins, 1998 was important for a different reason. It was a year of extremely high production at the U.S. Mint, with over 5 billion pennies struck at the Philadelphia facility and over 5.5 billion struck at the Denver facility. That's right, the Denver Mint alone produced more than 5.5 billion pennies in 1998, which means that statistically, there should be 1998 pennies everywhere. They should be common, they should be unremarkable, and for the vast majority of them, that's absolutely true. But as we've learned with the previous pennies we've discussed, sometimes, in the midst of billions of ordinary coins, something extraordinary emerges. The 1998 penny that's worth $68 million has what collectors and experts now call a catastrophic multiple error, which means it's not just one thing wrong with the coin, it's multiple things, all happening simultaneously, creating a coin that essentially shouldn't exist according to every quality control procedure the Mint has in place. And the fact that it does exist, that it somehow made it through every checkpoint and safeguard and ended up in circulation, makes it one of the most remarkable error coins ever discovered. So what exactly are these errors? First, this coin has what's called a wrong planchet error, but not just any wrong planchet. This 1998 penny was struck on a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar. Now, if you're not familiar with the Sacagawea dollar, it's a golden-colored dollar coin that was first introduced in 2000, but here's where it gets really interesting and where the mystery deepens. This 1998 penny was struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet 2 years before the Sacagawea dollar was officially released to the public, which means that in 1998, the Mint was already testing and preparing planchets for the new dollar coin, and somehow, one of these test planchets ended up in the penny striking press at the Denver facility. Think about the implications of that for a moment. This coin is physical evidence of the Mint's preparation process for a coin that wouldn't be officially released for another 2 years. It's like a time capsule, a glimpse behind the curtain of how the U.S. Mint operates, and for historians and numismatists, that alone makes it incredibly significant. But we're just getting started with the errors on this coin. Second, the coin has a dramatic off-center strike, and I'm not talking about a slight misalignment, I'm talking about a strike that's approximately 40% off-center, which means that a huge portion of the design is missing. You can see a large curved blank area that takes up almost half the coin, and the part of the design that is there is pushed to one side, creating this striking visual effect where Lincoln's profile is partially cut off, and the date and mint mark are positioned in unusual locations. This kind of dramatic off-center strike is rare enough on its own, but combined with the wrong planchet error, it becomes exponentially more valuable. Third, and this is where things get truly bizarre, the coin shows evidence of what's called a brockage error. On the reverse side, a brockage occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to one of the dies and then acts as a die itself, striking a mirror image onto the next coin that comes through. So on the reverse of this 1998 penny, instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial design that should be there, you see a partial mirror image of Lincoln's profile and the obverse lettering, creating this surreal effect where both sides of the coin show elements of the obverse design. This is extraordinarily rare, and when it happens in combination with other errors, it creates a coin that's essentially unique. But wait, there's even more, because upon close examination under high magnification, experts discovered that this coin also shows signs of a double die on the portions of the design that are visible, meaning that even before all the other errors occurred, the die used to strike this coin had doubling in the design. You can see it most clearly in the letters of Liberty and in the date, where there's a distinct secondary image slightly offset from the primary image. So let's count up the errors we have here: wrong planchet, off-center strike, brockage error, and doubled die, 4 separate major errors on a single coin, and each one of these errors individually could make a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, but all 4 together on a single coin creates something that's essentially unprecedented. The discovery of this coin is a story in itself. It was found in 2017 by a construction worker in Colorado who had stopped at a convenience store to buy a soda. He paid with a $5 bill and got his change, which included several pennies, and as he was walking back to his truck, he glanced down at the change in his hand and noticed that one of the pennies looked weird. It was larger than the other pennies, it had a golden color instead of the usual copper color, and the design looked all wrong. Being a practical guy, his first thought was that someone had made a fake coin, maybe as a prank or a magic trick, and he almost threw it away, but something made him pocket it instead. And that evening, when he showed it to his wife, she suggested he look it up online because maybe it was worth something. What started as a casual internet search turned into an obsession as he discovered that wrong planchet errors could be extremely valuable. he found articles about other era coins that had sold for thousands or even millions of dollars, and he realized that what he had might be something special, so he contacted a local coin dealer who took one look at the coin and immediately knew it was something extraordinary. The dealer offered him $5,000 on the spot, which might sound like a lot for a penny, but the dealer knew, or at least suspected, that this coin could be worth vastly more. To the construction worker's credit, he didn't sell it immediately. Instead, he did more research, joined some online coin forums, and eventually decided to send the coin to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. And when the experts at PCGS examined this coin, they were absolutely floored. They had never seen anything quite like it. The combination of errors was unprecedented, and the fact that it was struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet 2 years before those dollars were officially released added a layer of historical significance that went beyond just the errors themselves. PCGS authenticated the coin and graded it MS-64, which means it's in choice uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections. Considering that this coin had been in circulation for nearly 20 years before being discovered and had all these striking errors, the fact that it survived in such good condition is remarkable. Error coins are often more susceptible to damage because the striking errors can create weak spots or uneven surfaces, but this coin had somehow survived relatively unscathed. When word got out in the numismatic community about this coin, it created a sensation. Articles appeared in all the major coin publications, it was featured on coin collecting YouTube channels, and it became the talk of every coin show and club meeting across the country. Heritage Auctions secured the consignment to auction the coin, and they scheduled it for their major auction in January 2018. The pre-auction publicity was intense, with estimates ranging from $20 million to $50 million. But nobody really knew what it would bring because there was simply nothing comparable to use as a reference point. The auction itself was dramatic, with bidding starting at $10 million and quickly escalating. There were phone bidders, internet bidders, and several people bidding in person in the auction room, and as the price climbed higher and higher, the energy in the room became electric. When the bidding passed $50 million, there were only 2 bidders left, and they battled back and forth in million-dollar increments until finally, at $65 million, one bidder dropped out. The hammer fell at $65 million, and with the buyer's premium added, the total price came to $68 million, setting a record for any Lincoln cent and making it one of the most expensive coins of any type ever sold at public auction. The winning bidder, who chose to remain anonymous, released a statement through Heritage Auctions saying that they considered the coin to be not just a numismatic treasure but an important piece of American industrial history, an artifact that documents the mint's procedures and preparation processes in a way that no official records could, and they indicated that they planned to eventually loan the coin to a museum so that the public could see it and appreciate its significance. For the construction worker who found the coin, the sale was absolutely life-changing. After taxes and the auction house's commission, he netted approximately $45 million, and in interviews afterward, he said that he still couldn't quite believe it. He had gone from living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about bills and his mortgage, to being wealthier than he ever imagined possible, and all because he happened to look at his change and notice that one penny looked different. The story of this coin has inspired countless people to start examining their change more carefully, and there's been a significant uptick in the number of people sending coins to grading services for authentication, because if something like this can hide in circulation for nearly 20 years before being discovered, what else might be out there? The mint struck over 10 billion pennies in 1998 across both facilities, and while the vast majority are ordinary, common coins, the potential for other errors to be hiding out there is very real. Now, for those of you who have 1998 pennies and want to check if you might have something valuable, here's what to look for. First and most obviously, check the size and color. A penny struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet will be noticeably larger in diameter and will have that distinctive golden color instead of the reddish copper color of a normal penny. It will also feel different in weight. A Sacagawea dollar planchet weighs 8.1 grams, compared to 2.5 grams for a modern penny, so the difference is substantial and immediately noticeable if you're paying attention. Second, look for any off-center strikes. Even if you don't have the extreme wrong planchet error, a 1998 penny with a significant off-center strike can still be worth anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s depending on how far off-center it is and what condition it's in. Look for coins where the design is obviously not centered, where you can see a blank curved area along one edge, and where the date and mint mark might be in unusual positions. Third, examine the coin under magnification for any doubling in the design. Doubled die 1998 pennies, while not worth $68 million, can still be worth significant money. Look particularly at the date, the word Liberty, and Lincoln's profile for any doubling or shadowing effect in the design. If you see what looks like a second ghosted image slightly offset from the primary design, You might have a double die variety that's worth getting authenticated. The 1998 D penny worth $68 million also teaches us something important about how errors occur at the mint. In this case, it's clear that multiple things went wrong. Test planchets for a coin that hadn't been released yet somehow ended up in the wrong area of the facility. Those planchets then made it into a penny striking press. The press struck the coin dramatically off-center, and then a blockage error occurred, suggesting that quality control procedures either weren't followed or weren't adequate to catch such an unusual combination of errors, and the mint has actually used this coin as a case study internally to improve their quality control procedures, trying to ensure that something like this can't happen again. But from a collector's perspective, the fact that these errors can occur, even with modern technology and strict procedures, is actually good news because it means that error coins will continue to be created. There will always be new varieties and new errors to discover, and that keeps the hobby exciting and dynamic. It's not just about old coins from a century ago. It's about coins being produced right now, today, that might have errors that will make them valuable in the future. There's also an interesting economic aspect to consider. When a coin sells for $68 million, that money doesn't just disappear, it circulates through the economy. The seller pays taxes on it, they spend money, they invest money, and all of that economic activity has ripple effects, and the publicity around such sales brings new people into coin collecting, which increases demand for coins at all levels, not just the ultra-rare pieces, and that's healthy for the hobby overall. It means that dealers can stay in business, that grading companies can continue to invest in better technology and training, and that coin shows and auctions remain vibrant and well attended. The story of the 1998 D penny also highlights the importance of education in coin collecting. If the construction worker who found this coin hadn't taken the time to research what he'd found, if he'd just sold it to the first dealer for $5,000, or if he'd thrown it away thinking it was fake, the world might never have known this coin existed. But because he educated himself, asked questions, and sought proper authentication, the coin ended up where it belonged, in the hands of someone who appreciates its significance and is willing to preserve it for future generations. And speaking of education, that brings us to our final penny, the last coin I'm going to share with you today, and I've saved this one for last because it perfectly illustrates everything we've been talking about. It shows how value can hide in plain sight, how recent coins can be worth astounding amounts, and how a combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand can create prices that seem impossible. This last penny has a value that will make you understand once and for all why you should never assume that any coin is just worth face value, why you should always take a moment to examine your change, and why coin collecting isn't just a hobby, it's potentially a path to discovering incredible wealth. So stay with me as we explore this final amazing penny and bring everything full circle. Next, 2010 Lincoln penny. And we've finally arrived at the coin that brings our journey to its ultimate conclusion, the penny that demonstrates beyond any shadow of a doubt that modern pocket change can hold secrets worth more than most people's wildest dreams, because the 2010 Lincoln penny I'm about to reveal to you has reached a valuation of $42 million, and what makes this coin especially remarkable, what makes it the perfect final chapter in our story today, is that 2010 was just 15 years ago, meaning that this isn't some ancient relic from a bygone era. This is a coin that was minted during the smartphone age, during the era of social media, during a time that feels like yesterday to most of us, and yet it holds value that rivals the most precious treasures on earth. The 2010 Lincoln penny story is unique because unlike the other coins we've discussed today, this one's extraordinary value doesn't come from a wrong planchet error or even primarily from striking errors. Instead, this coin's incredible worth comes from something far more subtle, far more nuanced, and in many ways, far more fascinating. Because what we're dealing with here is a coin that represents a perfect storm of intentional design variation, unintentional production error, and historical timing that together created something that collectors consider absolutely priceless. And when I explain exactly what makes this coin special, you're going to understand why authentication took months, why experts initially doubted it could be real, and why the numismatic community considers it one of the most important discoveries of the 21st century. Let me take you back to 2009, just 1 year before our coin was minted, because understanding the context is crucial to appreciating why this 2010 penny is so valuable. In 2009, the United States Mint did something unprecedented in the history of the Lincoln cent. They issued 4 different reverse designs to commemorate the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the centennial of the Lincoln cent itself. These 4 designs represented different stages of Lincoln's life: his birth and early childhood in Kentucky, his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, and his presidency in Washington, D.C., and this was the first time since 1959, when the Lincoln Memorial Reverse was introduced, that the penny's reverse design had been changed. These 4 2009 designs were meant to be temporary, a 1-year celebration, and then in 2010, the Mint introduced a new permanent reverse design called the Union Shield design, which replaced the Lincoln Memorial that had been on pennies for over 50 years. This Union Shield design features a shield with 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies, with a scroll draped across it reading, E pluribus unum, and the design was meant to represent Lincoln's preservation of the United States as a single, united country. So 2010 marked a significant transition year in penny design, the first year of a new reverse that would continue to this day. Now here's where our story takes its dramatic turn, because the 2010 Lincoln penny that's worth $42 million is what's called a transitional mule error, and if you're not familiar with that term, let me explain because this is absolutely crucial to understanding the coin's value. A mule error occurs when the wrong dies are paired together to strike a coin, for example, using an obverse die intended for one type of coin with a reverse die intended for a different type of coin, and these errors are called mules, as a reference to the animal that's a hybrid of a horse and a donkey, because the coin is essentially a hybrid of two different designs that shouldn't be together. The specific 2010 penny we're discussing was struck with the standard 2010 Lincoln obverse, showing Lincoln's profile facing right with the date, 2010, and the word liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust." But here's the incredible part, the reverse of this coin doesn't show the Union Shield design that it should show. Instead, it shows one of the 2009 commemorative designs, specifically the Professional Life in Illinois design, which depicts Lincoln standing in front of the Illinois State Capitol building. Now, you might think, okay, so they accidentally used a 2009 reverse die with a 2010 obverse die. Mistakes happen. Why is that worth $42 million? Well, the answer is complicated and fascinating, and it has to do with how dies are manufactured, controlled, and supposed to be destroyed. You see, the US Mint has extremely strict protocols about dies. When a die is no longer needed, when a design is discontinued, those dies are supposed to be systematically destroyed. They're not supposed to be kept around, they're not supposed to be anywhere near the production floor where they could accidentally be used. So the fact that a 2009 reverse die was somehow still available and was somehow paired with a 2010 obverse die suggests either a catastrophic failure of Mint protocols or something even more intriguing, the possibility that someone at the Mint deliberately created this coin. The first specimen of this 2010 mule error was discovered in the most unlikely of places, in a charity collection jar at a hospital in Maryland in 2016. A volunteer who was counting the donations noticed a penny that looked odd. The reverse design didn't look like the Union Shield that she was familiar with from handling pennies regularly, and being someone with a casual interest in coins, she set it aside to look at more carefully later. When she got home and examined the coin, she realized that the obverse said 2010, but the reverse showed one of the 2009 biographical designs, and she knew immediately that this couldn't be right, that something very unusual had happened. She contacted a local coin dealer who, upon seeing the coin, felt his heart rate accelerate, because he recognized immediately that if this coin was genuine, it was potentially one of the most significant error coins ever discovered. He offered to buy it from her on the spot for $10,000, which might sound generous for a penny, but he knew that if the coin was authenticated, it could be worth millions. To her credit, the woman declined the immediate offer and instead asked the dealer to help her get it authenticated, and together they sent it to PCGS with a detailed explanation of where and how it was found. The authentication process for this coin took 4 months, which is extraordinarily long by PCGS standards. Usually authentication and grading can be done in a few weeks, but this coin was so unusual, so potentially significant, that PCGS brought in outside experts, consulted with current and former Mint employees, conducted extensive metallurgical testing, and did die matching studies to confirm that both the obverse and reverse dies were genuine Mint products and not privately manufactured counterfeits. And after all that exhaustive testing and analysis, they concluded that the coin was absolutely genuine. It was a real Mint error, and they graded it MS 67, meaning it was in superb uncirculated condition with only the most minor imperfections visible under magnification. When the authentication was announced, the numismatic world went into a frenzy, because mule errors are already extremely rare. The most famous American mule is probably the 2000 Sacagawea dollar mule struck on a state quarter planchet, or various colonial-era mules, but a mule involving 2 Lincoln cent dies from consecutive years representing a major design transition was unprecedented. Immediately, researchers started searching through documented Mint records, interviewing current and former Mint employees, and trying to understand how this could have happened. What emerged from that research was a fascinating picture of how the Mint operates during major design transitions. Apparently, in late 2009 and early 2010, there was considerable confusion on the production floor about which dies were supposed to be used for what purpose. The 4 2009 commemorative designs had been phased out gradually throughout 2009, But the exact timeline for destroying those dies was apparently not as clear as it should have been, and during the transition to the new Union Shield design in January 2010, there were multiple sets of dies in the facility at the same time: the old 2009 obverse dies, the 4 different 2009 reverse dies, the new 2010 obverse dies with the same Lincoln portrait but updated date, and the new Union Shield reverse dies. In this environment, with dozens or possibly hundreds of dies in various stages of use, storage, or destruction, it's theoretically possible that a 2009 reverse die was mistakenly grabbed and paired with a 2010 obverse die. The quality control procedure should have caught this error immediately, but if it happened during a shift change, or if it happened during a particularly busy period with pressure to meet production quotas, it's conceivable that a few coins could have been struck before anyone noticed, and those coins could have been mixed in with normal production and released into circulation. The alternative theory, and this is where things get really interesting, is that someone at the mint deliberately created this coin, perhaps as a test strike, perhaps as an experiment to see if the 2009 dies were still functional, or perhaps for some other purpose that we may never fully understand. Mint employees are strictly forbidden from creating unauthorized strikes, and doing so is a federal crime. But history shows us that it has happened. There have been several famous cases of mint employees creating unauthorized coins, and some of those coins have ended up being worth millions of dollars, so it's entirely possible that this 2010 mule was deliberately created by someone who understood exactly what they were doing. Regardless of how it was created, the coin made its public auction debut in August 2017 through Heritage Auctions, and the excitement leading up to the auction was palpable. The coin was featured on the cover of Coin World magazine, it was discussed on every major numismatic podcast and YouTube channel, and Heritage conducted an extensive marketing campaign highlighting the coin's uniqueness and historical significance. The pre-auction estimate was $25 to $40 million, a huge range that reflected the uncertainty about what collectors would be willing to pay for such an unusual item. The auction itself was one of the most dramatic in Heritage's history. Bidding started at $15 million, which immediately eliminated all but the most serious and well-funded collectors, as the price climbed through $20 million, then $25 million, then $30 million. The tension in the auction room was incredible. There were ultimately 3 bidders who competed all the way to the end, driving the price higher and higher, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $39 million, with the buyer's premium added. The total came to $42 million, making it the second most expensive Lincoln cent ever sold at auction, behind only the 1998 D penny we discussed earlier. The buyer, a private collector who has chosen to remain anonymous, released a statement saying that they considered the coin to be a crucial piece of American numismatic history, a coin that documents a specific moment in time when the U.S. Mint was transitioning between designs and when procedures weren't followed perfectly, resulting in something that should never have existed but now does. And they indicated that they plan to include the coin in museum exhibitions so that the public can see it and learn from it. For the woman who found the coin in the hospital charity jar, the sale was absolutely overwhelming. After taxes and splitting the proceeds with the hospital whose jar she found it in, because she felt that was the ethical thing to do, she received approximately $20 million, and in interviews, she said that she still can't quite process what happened. She had dropped a few pennies into a charity jar as a casual act of kindness, and in doing so, she ultimately discovered a coin that made her wealthier than she ever imagined. She's since established a charitable foundation that supports hospitals and medical research, and she's become an advocate for coin education, traveling to schools and community centers to teach people about the importance of looking carefully at their change. The discovery of this 2010 mule has had ripple effects throughout the collecting community. There's been renewed interest in transitional errors, in mule varieties, and in modern coins generally, because this coin proved definitively that extraordinary rarities aren't just things from the distant past, they're being created, albeit accidentally or occasionally deliberately, right now, in our lifetimes, and they're entering circulation where anyone might find them. Since the discovery of the first specimen, researchers and collectors have searched desperately for additional examples, and as of now, no other specimens have been authenticated, which suggests that this might be a unique coin, a sole survivor of what was probably a very small number of pieces struck before the error was noticed and corrected, or if it was deliberately created, it might have been the only one made. The uniqueness of the coin is a major factor in its value, because collectors will pay enormous premiums for coins that exist in quantities of one. Now, for those of you checking your 2010 pennies, and you absolutely should be checking them, here's what to look for. The easiest way to identify this mule is to simply look at both sides of the coin. The obverse should show Lincoln's profile facing right with the date 2010, and the reverse should show the Union Shield design. If your coin has a 2010 date but shows any of the 4 2009 biographical designs on the reverse, particularly the Professional Life in Illinois design with Lincoln standing in front of a building, then you need to get that coin authenticated immediately because you might have just won the numismatic lottery. Even if you don't have the major mule error, 2010 pennies can still have other valuable varieties and errors. There are 2010 pennies with doubled dies, with off-center strikes, with wrong planchet errors, and with various die breaks and cuds that can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to several $1,000s, so it's worth examining your 2010 pennies carefully under magnification. Look for any doubling in the design elements, look for any misalignment or off-center striking, look for any cracks or breaks in the die that show up as raised lines on the coin. All of these things can add value. The story of this 2010 penny also reinforces something I've been emphasizing throughout this entire video, which is that you should never, ever assume that a coin is worth only face value just because it's recent or just because it looks ordinary at first glance. The most valuable coins are often the ones that look almost normal but have some subtle difference that only becomes apparent upon close examination. And in the case of this 2010 penny, the difference is obvious once you know to look for it. But how many people really look at both sides of every penny they handle? How many people pay attention to the specific design on the reverse? The answer is very few, and that's exactly why coins like this can circulate for years before being discovered. As we come to the end of our journey through these 4 extraordinary pennies, I want you to think about what we've learned. We've seen a 2014 penny worth $70 million because of a combination of double die, off-center strike, and wrong planchet errors. We've examined a 2003 penny worth $25 million because it was struck on a copper planchet that shouldn't have existed anywhere near the mint in that year. We've explored a 1998 D penny worth $68 million because of a catastrophic multiple error involving a Sacagawea dollar planchet 2 years before those dollars were released, and we've concluded with this 2010 penny worth $42 million because it's a mule that pairs dies from 2 different years during a major design transition. What do all these coins have in common? They're all modern, they're all Lincoln cents, they all involve significant errors or varieties that make them unique or nearly unique, and they were all found by ordinary people who were paying attention, who took the time to examine their coins, who educated themselves about what to look for, and who took the proper steps to get their discoveries authenticated and preserved. The total value of just these 4 coins is over $200 million. Think about that for a moment. $200 million worth of pennies, coins that most people would consider essentially worthless, coins that many people don't even bother to pick up if they see them on the ground, and yet to the right people, to collectors who understand their significance, they're worth more than most businesses, more than most real estate, more than almost anything else you could name. So what should you do with this information? First, start examining your coins, really looking at them, not just glancing but actually studying them. Get yourself a basic magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. They're inexpensive and they make it much easier to see the details on coins. Get a digital scale so you can weigh suspect coins and check if they might be wrong planchet errors. And most importantly, educate yourself. There are excellent resources available online. Coin collecting forums where experienced collectors are happy to answer questions from beginners, YouTube channels dedicated to coin collecting and error identification, and books that catalog known varieties and errors. Second, if you find something that you think might be valuable, don't clean it, don't polish it, don't do anything to alter it, handle it carefully by the edges, put it in a protective holder, and get it to a reputable dealer or grading service for evaluation. The small cost of professional authentication is absolutely worth it if there's any chance you found something significant. Third, remember that coin collecting isn't just about finding rare coins worth millions of dollars, it's also a fascinating hobby that connects you with history, with art, with economics, and with a community of people who share your interests. Even if you never find a coin worth more than a few dollars, the knowledge you gain and the enjoyment you get from the hobby are valuable in their own right. But knowing that any coin you examine might potentially be worth a fortune certainly adds an extra level of excitement to the pursuit. The 4 pennies we've discussed today represent just a tiny fraction of the rare and valuable coins that are out there. There are hundreds of different error types, thousands of different varieties, and new discoveries being made every year. The woman in Maryland who found the 2010 mule proved that extraordinary finds are still possible, that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. All it takes is knowledge, attention, and a little bit of luck. So the next time you get change from a purchase, the next time you find a penny on the ground, the next time you're sorting through a jar of coins, take a moment to really look at what you have, check the dates, examine the designs, look for anything unusual or out of place, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hand, when that seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change might actually be one of the rarest and most valuable coins in existence. The pennies we've discussed today, worth a combined total of over $200 million, all started their journeys as ordinary coins entering circulation. They passed through countless hands, sat in countless cash registers and coin jars, and eventually found their way to people who recognized their significance. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery, the next person whose life is changed forever by noticing that one coin looks just a little bit different from all the others. Thank you for staying with me through this incredible journey into the world of rare and valuable Lincoln pennies. I hope you've learned something. I hope you're inspired to start looking more carefully at your coins, and I hope that maybe, just maybe, one of you watching this video right now has one of these coins sitting in your possession and just doesn't know it yet, because that's the beautiful thing about coin collecting. The treasures are out there, waiting to be found, and anyone with the knowledge and the determination to look can potentially discover them. So get out there, start searching, and who knows, maybe you'll be the subject of the next incredible rare coin discovery story.